Hello, Strategist here, and this is the single most comprehensive guide to rearing children in Thea 2 that you are ever going to get. I do already have a guide. I'm going to filter that out of the playlist. This is going to be the go-to one. There are a few key issues that I neglected to tap on, so we're going to come back and we're going to make sure we put this thing to rest. First of all, when we go into generic, we find the child growing up event. Notice that there is one for C, there are ones for different races. I will cover those in future videos. This is going to be my largest one out of all these, so that I can cover all the bases before we go ahead in the future events. If we look into this, you'll notice that my events do not look like yours. I have copied a whole bunch of these nodes so that I can take each and every one and have it go through in a top to bottom, left to right form to make it easier for me to track and maybe graphically for you to understand exactly how I came to the conclusions that I did. When a child gets to the growing up and it triggers for him, you are normally presented with this familiar thing. The traumatic events of the blah 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 blah, please choose for your child. Now, first of all, notice that all of these are green. If it is green, it means it only has a small chance of showing up. We'll cover the chances later, but that's a key thing to be aware of. The only two that are guaranteed to always show up are crafting and gathering. That's it. Anything else only shows up a certain amount of time, though I'm assuming a lot of you had already figured that particular aspect out. I'm going to jump down to the bottom first so we can cover the deities, and this is a core thing that I neglected to tap on earlier. I'm actually going to come out of this event to show you guys something. Whenever you are doing your divine quest, there are 3 tags you can end up with when you complete your divine quest. For this example, I'm going to go with Zivia. We're going to jump to node 16. When you are getting towards the end of your divine quest, for every single deity, the keyword you are looking for is something that says, now you and me both, we are free. Once you see that, you are on one of 3 different pathways. After you say take your gift, you're going to be receiving a divine tag, which is used to influence the numbers for a fair number of the events going ahead. When you click take your gift, you are hoping to see either just leave as an option or choose one of these 2 things. All of these are a different tag. For this one, if you just see leave, it's giving you the tag that'll be referencing as D's tag. If you see choose a domain, it means that somehow you have followed that deity, but not done it to such a degree as to be a true follower. You are more following their religion as opposed to that deity themselves. If you get to this point and you see take your gift and you see choose one of the domains that deity covered, you're choosing that domain specifically. All 3 of these are different tags and they all change different events. So to sum up again, when you see now you and me both, we are free, choose take your gift, and immediately you have an idea of what your tag is. If you see leave, you are whatever that deity's tag. When I say that deity's tag, this is when you got it. If, however, you get to this point and it says choose one of 2 domains, yours may not say nature or harmony, that's just D's 2 domains. That is when you're choosing a domain, you are not getting that deity's particular tag. Because some deities have an overlap in domains, you are choosing the domain that is an overlapping area between 2 deities. This is a key thing to be aware of before we go ahead. Going back into generic, going into the child growing up event, again, I'm going to go straight down to the deities events because they're the easiest ones to be able to identify. Namely, unlike everyone else, they don't have an event of what your, most of them don't have a result of what your reward is. If you have a thing that says Horse's Path, Deez's Path, Triglave's Path, and you choose it, you're getting that reward. This is what you got for completing your divine quest to the T on following your deity. This is your specified, you only get this for following that deity's path. If you follow Horse, what you get out of this is you get a light sick Caracanza. I'm about to pronounce that wrong. Even with that tag though, do be aware a lot of these still only have like a 20% chance plus the child in question's luck of it appearing. You're not guaranteed to get the event, but if you see this event, you might want to choose it once. This is the only time you're going to get that event. If you are a follower of D, what you get instead is you get a Water Light Sick Rusalka. And again, what this means is not just following the god. You have to get to the end of the divine quest and it just say leave. You don't get to choose one of her 2 domains. If you're a follower of Triglaive, what you get is a Royal Crow with some animal training packs, which, decent. If you're a follower of the Goddess of Death, Nia, what you get is you get a Lightsick Poludnika. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, I apologize. If you're a follower of Zoria, what you were getting was a Lightsick Siren. If you are a follower of Strebolg, what you are getting is a Lightsick Vodnik. If you are a follower of Zverog, and again, for all of these, you have to make sure that you do them like to the T. If it's, I'm spiritual but not a religious follower of that deity, you don't get these. You have to be like, I am for Strebolg if you want Strebolg's result. For him, you get a small armored bear. If you're a follower of Leda, you receive a Lightsick Befuddler. For some reason, I thought there was an I in there for a second. You get a Lightsick Befuddler. And if you follow Maravit, you get a Zort Demon. And now that we've gone through those, we start getting into some of the things I was saying. This is still part of, the end result deity path, but this is the first of the tags that go off of a domain, not a deity. If you are a follower of D or the other nature god, you may end up have not followed them to the T, and it gave you a choice between nature and a different domain of theirs. If you choose the nature domain, what you end up with is a random chance of what could happen. If you're a follower of the nature domain, you have a 5% chance of your child becoming a Pine Canet. If they do not become a Pine Canet, there's a 30 plus luck, it's relatively high actually, of getting a Forest Villi. If they don't get either of those, you have a chance of becoming a Vahur, and that chance was 25 plus luck. So in these cases, your children's luck is very important. And if they don't get any of them, your child still becomes a snake, which could still be good or bad, depending upon what you're wanting. Now, after this, other than those events right there, I will be posting in the description below a link to a PDF that I have posted. It's a Google Docs that lists everything down with its qualifications. So I'm going to go through the numbers, and if it's kind of hard to follow along with the math, I've already broken down the math to the end result. I.e., if I choose this and my stats are this, what are the chances I have this? Not just, hey, this event has a 30% chance to fire. I broke it down what your chance of each result are. So if nothing else, click that link. I'm here to help. Let me remove Nature's Path from this. Going up at top, you have Strength and Chance. Now, for a lot of these type of events, there's a key thing to note that there is a difference between making the event show up and having a good chance at said event. I'll actually bring up my little PDF so I can give you guys good numbers for an example. For the strength event to show up, just to show up, you only need a 3 strength or higher in the child. And as the child starts with a 2 in all of those core stats, this is really easy to do. As long as one of like 2 or 3 level ups happen, you have a good chance of possibly being able to choose strength, either as a primary or a secondary, in getting that 3. However, if you want the good out on your numbers, you're going to need that child to have a 4 or higher. And this type of thing happens a fair few times. Always, if you are really thinking about choosing something, right-click the child and look at the stat in question. Just because the event popped up doesn't mean you have a good chance of it happening, of a good chance of getting the result you want. In this case, if the child has a strength of 4 or higher, they have a 95% chance of becoming the warrior. If they do not have that 4 or higher, they only have an 85% chance. But here's a key thing to be aware of. These events can trigger in order. If this doesn't work, that one works. So if your child has a 4 or higher in strength, it's not a 95% chance that they become a warrior and a 5% chance that they don't. It is a 95% chance that they become a warrior, and then in that 5% chance that they fail, another 85% chance that they become a warrior. What this ends up doing is, if your child has a 4 or higher in strength and not just a 3, they have a 99.25% chance of becoming a warrior. Whereas if they only have a 3 in strength, they only have an 85% chance of becoming a warrior. This is a big difference to be aware of. It's not a 10% difference if you just glance at the events. It is a key difference between a good chance of your child becoming what you want and what I will reference as a fail state. For all of these events, there will always be a white line at the bottom, and it tends to lead to a death or a scavenger type thing. I'm going to reference this as a fail state. So in this case, the difference between a 3 and a 4 or higher in strength is a 15% chance for a fail state or a 0.75% chance at a fail state. You're going to want the good stats. Even if you really want that class right now, like, oh my god, ooh, I need a warrior, I need someone to defend the thing. Is it worth that kid dying? Are you sure you can't just go with maybe another gather or something to help you in the meantime? You might want to balance these out. But after the 95 and after the 85, we have, again, what I call the fail state. In this case, there's a 3% chance the kid dies. This happens a lot. When you've gotten a scavenger, be aware that that is the single last event that can happen for you. It rolls for death first. Even though it's a slight chance of it happening, it's only a 3%. Just know that death gets first dibs before you get that scavenger. The end result ends up being kind of the same, because you could just say 97% for the other thing to happen. But for future events, the order of who gets dibs is important. In this case, what that means is, for a 3 or a 3 strength, you only have a 14.55% chance of a scavenger and a 0.45% chance at them just flat out dying. That's only 0.5 of a chance. 0.5, basically. We'll round it. It's rather small. If your kid had a 4 or higher in strength, it was only a 0.7275 for that scavenger and only a 0.0225 for them to die. So that 1 in strength is a very big difference, 0.45 to 0.0225 or 0.0225. I was correct in reading that. To make this clear, for everyone who really likes saving a few points and going for an elven child or a dwarven child when they're making their party at the beginning and choosing that as their chosen, oh my god, I get to be the elf and I get to save points from making them be a child. Be aware that a lot of these fail states, when I say die, I mean die. If you look at this is the death event. They're both perishing, and there's a thing in here for if the person who died was your chosen one. Notice, it doesn't do anything special. It takes them. Take characters. Take characters as it died, and an adds tag to you died. That's your game over tag. That event where your guy who's low on health and he died and the god of death said, I'll take 2 people in exchange for you, that's a different event. This event doesn't go into that event. You don't get to say, oh, it's me, I have a safety net, I'll sacrifice 2 other people. You can still die. This is the single most guaranteed way for your chosen one to die, purely because you don't get to go from this into that death event. There is no safety net. So if you choose to have a chosen child, choose whatever his stats lead him to. That's a small chance, but man, are you going to rage if that 0.45 to 0.0225 difference is what causes you to game over at the beginning of the game. I guarantee you're going to rage. Now, after strength, if we go back and remove this is the one issue with my sorting, by the way. There's a bit of distance to the left and right. After strength, we have perception. Now, perception is not chance-based. It is, they're not lying. It is just perception. If you were to look at it, as long as you have high enough perception, you're good to go. You just need to have a kid with 3 or higher perception, and you will always see perception. So, you might think it's about as common as the gathering and the crafting, but no, you still need that 3 perception. But again, we run into the issue. Make sure the kid has 4 or higher. In this case, it's a 90% chance, followed by a 75% chance if they don't have that 4 or higher. And again, like I said, it's multiplicative. That 75% chance is in addition to the 90, which means in result, if you had the 4 or higher, it's a 97.5% chance of you getting a child who is a hunter. If you only had a 3, they only have a 75% chance. That's a big difference. That is 22.5% chance. If that doesn't happen, they go into the fail state, 3% chance to die, the rest of it being a scavenger. Breaking that down, if you do not have a 4 or higher perception, just because it shows up doesn't mean you should choose it. If you only have a 3 perception, you have a 24.25% chance of being a scavenger and a 0.75 that the kid died. Whereas if you had the 4 or higher, 2.425 scavenger, 0.075 of the kid dying. Make sure if you're going to choose it, and you are, especially if you're in need for personnel, you don't want them dying off, you choose what their stat leads them to. Don't choose necessarily a role you think you need at that time. With that being said, as soon as you have a kid with a 4 or higher in perception, I would suggest grabbing a hunter. There are a bunch of events, especially involving animals, where just having a hunter gives you an easy out. That's not in the topic of today's video, but I would suggest trying to make sure you have at least one hunter. Now, I'm going to skip wisdom, wits, and mysticism and chance for right now, because you'll notice they all are part of different dialogue groups. There's a difference in this wisdom chance and this wisdom and chance, and that's based around whether or not you have a domain tag that I had mentioned earlier. So we're going to skip them for now so I can give some extra attention to them. The next thing we're going to cover is crafting. Now, like I said, crafting is always a guarantee. No matter what, you will always have the ability to choose crafting. But when we get to the crafting node, you'll notice we don't have that double line. We don't have that normal safety net on the percentage chances. We have 3 lines here. And that's because some of the deities, like Svarog, I believe, if you don't choose them, underneath where you get to choose their domains, like if you don't get them and you choose their domains, some of them have the domain of light. You can actually choose to follow light. And in this case for crafting, hold on, where did I put crafting over here? Because I don't want to lie to you guys. For crafting, if you are a follower of light, 96% of the time, you get something that happens. And this is a slight tweak on what we've done before. This isn't a safety net, because this time, not only do you get a craftsman, but your craftsman gets a bonus to crafting. They get a bonus to wisdom, and you get a free crafting tool. I'm going to call this the Super Crafter. If you download the PDF and you don't want to look at this video all the way through again for the numbers, you download the PDF, this is what I'm referencing as the Super Crafter, because they're going to get an extra bonus of crafting, wisdom, which leads to crafting, and you're going to get a free tool. And that bonus of crafting is pretty damn high. To make this clear, remember, your crafting skill is a secondary skill that is derived from other stats such as wisdom. I don't have the math. You can look it up yourself. Just right click, put your mouse on crafting and see what you're deriving from other stats. But a 3 in a secondary skill is equivalent to a much higher number in the primary skills. So this person has an unusually high starting crafting point that can easily be built upon with future things. This is like getting a free point in the crafter skill, craftsman, master craftsman. This is a free extra buff that stacks. You're going to want this. if you happen to choose the light domain. If that doesn't happen though, you still have your normal safety nets. If you're not a follower of light, but you have, the kid has 6 or higher in crafting, or you already have a craftsman in your group. And this or is important. There are a few things such as witch, Zerka, craftsman, gatherer, and healer, where you don't necessarily need the kid to be good so much as you need someone to be their trainer. Warrior, hunter, that doesn't happen. The kid's got to be good. You're not going to be a good hunter without perception. Crafting, gathering, Zerka, healer, witch. These are all like taught type skills, so to speak, in the lore of the game. So even if your kid doesn't have a 6 in crafting, you can get around it as long as you have another crafter. This or I like to think of as the, well, he's not good, but he can be taught, he can get on the job training. It still works in your favor if your way to get into this is if the kid somehow has a 6 or higher in crafting, just because he already has a good base before he gets the bonuses for being made a crafter. However, if you're needing an extra crafter, there's no reason not to go for this. Just know that if your kid has a 6 or higher in crafting and, you know, he doesn't have it in gathering, it might be good just to make him be a crafter because he's going to have the extra bonus going ahead. In this case, it's a 96% chance he becomes a crafter. If the kid doesn't have a 6 or higher in crafting and you don't already have a crafter, you still have a 90% chance of getting a crafter. This is practically guaranteed. If we look at the numbers that, again, are going to be down in the description below, if you have followed the path of light, your chance for a super crafter is 96%. Your chance of still getting a craftsman is 3.984%. If you add this together and just get rid of the idea that he's a super crafter, and like, I just need a craftsman. If you are a follower of the path of light, there is a 99.984% chance you get a crafter. If you roll badly on that, then I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? If you already have a crafter or the child has a 6 or higher in crafting, you still have a 99.6% chance of succeeding, getting the crafter you want. And if they don't have all this, of course, you still have that 90. Now, looking at our fail state, like crafting earlier, we see we have a little bit of an extra fail going on in the fail state. In which case, in this fail state, there's a 1% chance that you die. It's only 1. It's really small. That's not too bad. If your kid doesn't die, though, I get a scavenger? No. There's still a 30% chance in this very minuscule failure state that the kid becomes a goblin child. Which, it's a goblin child. You got a race out of it. You're good to go. It's fantastic. What this breaks down to, again, going off of light, training, no training. Even though you could be a prodigy, we're going to say training, because that's more like what's going to happen. If you're following the light path, goblin scavenger, or goblin child, 0.004. Not likely to happen. Scavenger, 0.01. Still not likely to happen, slightly more than the goblin. And the chance of death, 0.00016. If you're a follower of light and your child dies, the game hates you. I just take that to heart. If, however, you have training, 0.1 to get a goblin, 0.27, so 0.3 to get a scavenger, 0.004 to die. If all of this fails, if all of that does not happen, you just need a craftsman and you have nothing helping you. You only have a 0.1% chance of dying. That's still a very, very good number. I'd be willing to risk that, except for the chosen. Again, don't risk it if it's your chosen. You don't want them to die. All right, next up, I'm not going to go all the way back. The next one down is the Gatherer. Gatherer doesn't get all the good love that we saw before. Gatherer's big thing is 95. Again, 6 or higher, or you already have a Gatherer. If one of these two is 6 or higher, probably choose that for your child. He's just going to have a better footing to go off of. But again, if you have a trainer, there's no reason not to choose this. I'm just saying, if you're torn between a Gatherer and a Crafter, maybe choose the one that has the higher stat. That was a 95. This is a 90, which boils down to, if you have a Gatherer 6 or higher, 99.5% chance of success. If you don't, still a 90. We have our special fail state where we have a goblin child involved. It's still this one is still the 3%. No, yeah, it's the 1% and then the 30. Which means if you were to boil it all down, if you have a trainer or a prodigy, 0.005 of dying. 0.48 of getting a scavenger, and 0.04 of getting a goblin child. If that doesn't happen, if you're just grabbing one at random, 0.1 to die, almost 7% chance of getting a scavenger, almost 3% chance of getting a goblin child. You win some, you lose some. But there you go. If we aren't taking if we aren't taking craftsman, gathering, strength, or perception, what we have is that raw chance number. And I like chance. I would, however, this is the third line, I would, however, make a suggestion either to the developers or to anyone at home if you just want to change this. The chance event has a 40% chance of being allowed to be chosen, and that's a high number. However, in my personal experience, I've had a few children grow up where all they kept getting was lucky and the super luck thing. So I had nothing going in my favor but luck. In this one particular chance, I would suggest changing the chance. If you type in chance here, you'll see chance plus luck. We've seen this happen before for a lot of the deity events. Again, you're not required to take chance anyways, but if you're going to have a chance event, you might as well have the kids' luck involved in it. So I would suggest changing that one to plus luck. It's not going to change it by a whole hell of a lot, but choose it. If you see chance plus luck, you only have one thing begin their trials, and there are a lot of things that can happen here. I'm going to look into them, and then I'll break down the math. But 6 for you to get a fat rat, 12 for you to get a Vahur, and all of these are chance-based, there's no stats going involved in this. Another 12 for a Forest Villy, a 10 for a Goblin Gatherer, and a 10 for a Goblin Craftsman. Now, I'm not suggesting to change any of those to chance plus luck, just the chance itself appearing for people who may want to choose it. Now, breaking all those down before the failure event, work with me, you stupid PDF. Breaking all of those down, hold on, I'm sorry, the PDF went crazy. Breaking all those down, what you have is a 6% chance of getting a fat rat, a 11.28% chance of getting a Vahur, a 9.926% chance of getting a Force Villy, a 7.279 to get a Gatherer, that is a Goblin, and a 6.551 to get a Goblin Craftsman. If all of those fail to happen, this is a special fail state. Down here, you'll notice there's no death event. You get the Scoundrel and the Rat, which has a 58.96% chance of happening. This is why I would suggest making that chance be a chance plus luck. Sometimes you're going to just have the worst child. Just the worst. And he might end up with a ton of luck. This is a good way to get out of it because, yes, it's a Scoundrel. That's a fail state everyone else gets, but you also get that rat. While rats are kind of, pointless, it's an extra body that you can reference. If there's a death event that happens, the rat might be the one to take the damage. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing wrong necessarily with that extra body. An extra little someone to throw on that gathering event back in town. What I would suggest, personally, if you get one of these and you get that rat, make them run laps. Goofy, I know, but there's events that happen at the end of your movement. So I would use the rat as what I call the lap runner. Put the rat out 2 hexes from your town, close enough so that your town can assist in any event that happens, and make him just run around the town. Because right now, one of the big penalties to being in a town is you seem to get a whole hell of a lot less events, and the events where you get a lot of growth and experience and research points from. A lot of those events happen based upon you moving. So he's close enough to the town for the town to be doing the event, but he's still moving, so you're getting a lot more events. I would suggest at some point, if a lot of the other roles are filled, to roll this. You get some good stats, and even if you fail, you get that lap runner, as I like to call it. Hashtag rats are lap runners. If we go back, we've taken out chance, and I think we are now down to everything that was a particular choice. Yes. Now, no, intelligence. I apologize. Intelligence could always happen. Right in the middle. Not always happen, but it's not going to be overwritten by something else happening. Intelligence, of course, happens if you have a 3 or higher in intelligence. It says wisdom. That's just because this was copied over from the wisdom event, and then they changed it over here. Ignore what a lot of, if you're looking in this, ignore what their categories are called. Look at what it's actually doing. In this case, it's intelligence. Now, if we look at the top one here, we see this is one of those ones where they need to have a certain tag. Now, tag div 20 is you completed one of these two tags. I'm sorry. I think it's div 20. I'm going to say div 20 for now. Either way, as long as you know what's going on. A lot of the tags that have this particular type of thing are going to be, one of the two tags is that you completed the divine quest. Doesn't matter what deity it is. That's what one of these is checking. Did you complete the divine quest? The other tag is checking for, do you have the right domain tag in question that I'd mentioned earlier. For intelligence, that domain tag is harmony. If you have the harmony tag and you completed the divine quest, which basically, if you've gotten a domain tag, I'm fairly certain you're basically that close to completing the divine quest anyways. So, yay. Remember that. Harmony tag completed the divine quest. In this case, to note, because if someone's looking at the PDF too for the numbers, this is going to look weird. I'm going to have a lot of not applicables drawing from this. There's no chance here. If you get that harmony tag, be aware from there on out. If you see int, you're getting a healer. Not only are you getting a healer, you're getting a super healer. Guaranteed, better than that light tag from earlier, which was only a 96. This is a guaranteed chance. You choose harmony, boom, healers for days. The best healers you've ever seen. Ain't nobody dying around here. Brush off those haters. If you choose the harmony tag, they become a healer, they get 4 to intelligence, they get 4 to wisdom, and they get 4 to luck. Wisdom, good for crafting, good for gathering, good for, those wisdom-based magical attack things and or some of your heal skills. Intelligence, also good for some of those attacks, but intelligence is a key thing to be aware of. Intelligence is your core stat for research. Healers are good for their healing things, don't get me wrong, but I really like the idea of my healers being my researchers because they tend to have better intelligence. Again, you need intelligence to get here anyways. They make good researchers. If you choose the harmony tag, think this through. Not only are you getting a guaranteed good healer, you're getting your researchers. This is what your harmony tag is. This is your bookworms. This is your nerds. This is all the scientists in the back with the Erlenmeyer flasks. If you see that harmony tag and you're not certain about it, and I can sway you over to choosing that harmony tag, this is your research. At the end of the game, the scaling for how much those extra research flasks cost, I think stops at about 30. In other words, you need to get 30 points to get one research thing. More intelligence is always fantastic. Get them the intelligence, get them that crafting tool that adds to the research bonus. Boom. Don't even put these people in combat. Don't give them weapons, give them tons of defense, give them tons of health. Fantastic. Good for research. Now, ignoring that, because that was separate to itself, it is a separate mathematical thing. For the rest of these, this is under normal conditions. If you had a Zerka on your team, notice This doesn't care about their stats. They don't need an extraordinarily high int. This is just, do they have a Zerka? Do you already have a Zerka? Incorrect. I'm sorry, I take that back. Healer. It lists Zerka. The Zerka list that it drew for this is looking for the healer tag. So it's not Zerka healer. Retract that. What we have is a 97% chance if you already have a healer. If you don't already have a healer, 90% chance. What this boils down to is if you already have a healer, to get a healer, 99.7% chance. It's the class that keeps on giving. That's practically guaranteed. If you don't already have a healer, it's still 90. So at the beginning of the game, if intelligence pops up and you don't have a healer, grab one. Even if that person ends up kind of being like poor at healing, because you have them as your healer, in the future, if someone's really good at it, you've increased your chances so that they can become a healer. You want a healer to train the other healer. This is the guy who learned it but didn't master it, kind of a thing going on. If you already have a healer, hold on. I'm sorry, I covered a fail state. We have a special fail state, chance of dying, of course, 40% chance that they become a gatherer. You still can get a gatherer out of this. If they do not become a healer, a 0.118% chance, if you already had a healer, of them becoming a gatherer, and if you don't, a 4% chance of them becoming a gatherer, which is pretty good. And again, if you chose the Path of Harmony earlier, guaranteed healers, all these numbers don't matter to you anymore. If you had a previous healer, 0.178, and if you didn't, 6% chance of getting a gatherer, and if you have a healer, 0.003, very minuscule. If your person dies, the game hates you. And if you didn't, only a 0.1% chance of the child in question dying. Now, as we carry on, we see that the only events we have left are 3, but each of these events is listed twice, and they're in the same dialogue group. This is because there is things that can happen in the game to make one appear over the other. G2, G2, G1, G1. You'll notice that this is the exact same event. What it's going to come down to is whether or not you've grabbed a certain divine tag, one of those domain ones that I'd mentioned earlier. For this particular one, a little bit of cheese, admittedly, but so that you can remember it, I would erase the chance in the top one and replace that with div. Perhaps even make it capital and not lowercase. That way it doesn't look, garbo. And this is because in this one, if you choose the intelligence choice, when it gives you the domain choices, this event is not chance-based anymore. It's whether or not you have that tag. So choosing that intelligence tag always makes this event happen if your child has high enough wisdom. If we look into this, again, you only really need the 4 or higher wisdom. That's what it's checking. Wiz child, wiz child, wiz, 4 or higher wisdom. Boom. After this number breakdown's the same. Unlike the other events where choosing the domain either gave you a super version of that class or greatly increased your chances, all this does is guarantee that it shows up if the kid qualifies. That's it. So I'm only going to cover wisdom and chance once the number breakdown is the same as of the recording of this video. If we look into it, if you already have a Zerka, or your child has a wisdom of 5 or higher, these are both listed under G1, which means it checks for one or the other. No matter what though, 90% chance. Previous training or wisdom of 5% higher, 90% of the time, you get a Zerka. If you don't get the Zerka, 45% chance to get the Zerka. If that doesn't happen, 80% chance that you become a young Zerka. Key thing to note there. Going off of that, we have our normal fail thing, 1% chance of death, followed by a 40% chance of becoming a gatherer. If we were to do a breakdown, what this means is if you already have a Zerka, or the child's wisdom is high enough, you have a 94.5% chance of getting a Zerka. If you don't already have a Zerka, or their wisdom is not high enough, you only have a 45% chance of getting a Zerka. However, if you already had a Zerka or a high enough wisdom, you only have a 4.4% chance of getting a young Zerka. whereas you have a 44% chance of getting a young Zerka without it. So you stand a good chance for your first Zerka of them becoming a young Zerka. There's a pretty good chance. If all of these Zerka events don't happen, Zerka or Prodigy, 0.43, and without 4.3% chance of them becoming a Gatherer. The chance of them dying is 0.11 or 0.011 if you already had a Zerka or your child's a Prodigy. And all of that notwithstanding, a 6.5% chance of getting a Scavenger or a 0.65% chance of getting a Scavenger off of Wisdom and Chance, or in our edit of the case, Wisdom and Divinity. As we go back, our next event that we will be covering is Wits. As soon as I can drag this over here, our next thing that we'll be covering, take off Wisdom. The next one that we will be covering is Wits and Chance. We'll look over at what we have going on for Wits and Chance, and we'll see that our big key difference between these is whether or not we have the Div 18 tag. And what that tag is you choosing Turmoil if it pops up. Now this changes a few things for how a bunch of numbers break down. So in the file, I will list it as male Wits and Chance with Turmoil, without Turmoil, and female Wits and Chance with Turmoil and without Turmoil. That female changes the numbers drastically, and I'll explain why. If you do have the Turmoil tag, you'll see that we have an 85% chance of you getting a Bandit Warrior. You also, however, require a previous Bandit or a child with high enough wits. That's an or. That is required. High enough wits or Bandit and the Turmoil tag, 85% chance. If that doesn't happen and they're female, you have a 10% chance of them becoming an archer. If they are neither female or they failed all the other rolls, 65% chance of them becoming a bandit warrior again. We have our death failure state and then scavenger. Because of this breakdown with requiring turmoil and the one that required turmoil also requiring them to have a high wits or them you having a previous bandit, it completely plummets your chances of getting a bandit warrior, because the only event that can fire up here is whether or not that 65% chance runs. If you have turmoil and you have either a previous bandit or a 4 of wits or higher, then your child, and you're male, then your child has a 94.75% chance of becoming a warrior. If you don't have that divine tag or a bandit, or it should say that divine tag and a bandit or a high enough wits, your child only has a 65% chance to become a warrior if they're male. This means a 32% chance of becoming a scavenger, only a 4.8 if you meet all the prerequisites, and the chance of dying is 2.8 or 0.42 if you meet our difficult prerequisites. However, if the character is a female, because this only checks 10% of the time of them being a female, they get a rather high easy out. If they are a female with turmoil tag and a bandit or wits or higher, 93.775% of the time, they will become a bandit warrior. They will become an archer 1.5% of the time. They will become a scavenger 4.4, and they will die 0.378, slightly lower. This doesn't seem like much of an improvement. Like, you put in a little bit of archer, but the bad events barely went down. The big improvement is if you don't have a bandit already, wits, a high enough wits, one of those two, and the turmoil tag. What happens is we see that they only have a 58.5% chance to become a bandit warrior as opposed to 65. That looks like a penalty, but you have already a 10% chance of them becoming an archer. If you just add those two together, that is a 68.5% chance of them not having a fail state, which is 3.5% higher. Big improvement, but but an improvement nonetheless. Lowers their chance of dying from 2.8 to 2.5, and their scavenger chance from 32 down to 28.9. Also, because it's slightly higher, it means that you have an easier chance of getting a female in. She's a bandit archer. She now counts as a bandit. It's easier for your other kids to get in to be a bandit if you're unable to get your wits high enough. If you can't pull that off, or if you don't have the divine tag for that first one to fire, what you have back here is we have this wits and chance event. What this one requires is 50% of the time, and you have a kid with wits of 5 or higher. Lesser chance, and if we look at this, they require that turmoil tag again. Those two events happening, turmoil also increases the chances of you getting the wits to fire. After that, the numbers are the same. Turmoil is a big requirement if you want to have a good chance of getting a bandit. You are already in the positive no matter what. It's better than a coin flip 65. But if you see this event, do note that you kind of need that turmoil to really lock in your chances. If you want to fluff up the numbers, go with a female. If you don't have a female and you don't have turmoil tag, doesn't matter if you have a bandit or wits or not, because they both already require that thing anyways. Because you'll notice, it doesn't have the G1 as listed before. It's an or situation. You need all of these. What this leaves now is got to be the most complicated, convoluted thing to ever show up. Mysticism, chance, and female. Now this can be changed with and without you having a divine tag. At this point, I'm going to jump to the bottom real quick, just to point this one out, as we had mentioned earlier. Or, sorry, not that one. The top one. This also, for its events, requires a divine tag. Again, the first thing popping up, we don't really need to change them too much. It just increases the chance of it popping up. And this is done off the idea of you see a choice, what do you choose? So I'm not going to cover both of these. If you have the divine tag, if you have magic, all of these are chance based. If you look, because this says divine or magic, it's just magic user. It's either you already have a witch or you have divine. The child stat doesn't matter anymore. If you see this, this is what you had to work with. So this is all child and stat. I'm going to break this down, but to point out, previous magic user or divine tag, and then below it's chance, chance, chance. It's just chances after that. This is the only one that applies to. So again, magic user or the magic tag. I'm going to sum this up in the PDF as with magic. That's really it. Do you already have a magic user or do you have a magic tag? That's your big difference. Which means you have a good chance of getting higher rolls in this because it's an or type situation. To make this appear as well, there was an or situation, just to point out. 80% of the time it'll show up if you meet the other prerequisites, or SRT which was whether or not they had a 7 in mysticism or higher. If you already have, if like the kid has a honking mysticism already, there's not even a chance of this event popping up. You're just good to go. The other one without the tag, same type of situation. This just increased your chances. If we look into this, so like I said, 35% of the time, what you get is a human witch. If that doesn't work, 10% of the time, you get a human witch. If that doesn't work, 25% of the time, you get an unliving wraith. Congratulations, unliving wraith. If that doesn't work, you have a 3% of the chance for a death event. If that doesn't happen, 35% of the time you get a young witch. If that doesn't happen, 15% of the time you get a spider queen with a big old bonus to mysticism and destiny and intelligence. Like, I kind of want that event to happen. That sounds like a really good event to me. And if that doesn't happen, of course, you get a young witch again, but they're penalized and their maximum health, they get curses, and their wisdom is lower. You have a witch, it qualifies as a witch, but they're not that good. What this boils down to is, with a magic user or with the magic tag, 41.5% of the time you get a witch, 14.625% of the time you get an unliving wraith, 14.89 you get a young witch, 4.15 you get a spider queen, 23.5% of the time you get a cursed young witch, and 1.3% of the time they can die. If you do not have a magic user already, or the magic tag, you start to have some issues because you're wanting that tag. You only have 10% of the time to get a witch, 22.5 to get an unliving wraith, 22.9 for the young witch, 6.38 for a spider queen, 36.17 for a cursed young witch, and a 2% chance of dying. If you're unable to keep track of this, I will say magic, with magic, without magic, magic user. But if you look at the numbers, it's the same thing. Just if somehow you're unable to keep track of what I just said, they're there, even though the numbers will be the same. And again, like I said, for the other one, we track that down. Your big thing here is you need 50% chance or that 8. You remove the chance. That's what it is. You don't even need the magic tag to get into these. If the kid has a mysticism or 7 or higher, and you don't have the tag, you don't even have the chance. It just happens. What that tag is doing for the initial chance is it's an 80, not a 50. But remember, it's an 80, and then the other one could happen. So it's an 80, and then half what's remaining, another 10. 90% of the time, you'll see this if the kid has the bare minimum of 4 mysticism. But no matter what, if you get a kid with 7 or higher mysticism and they're female, by the way, all this is important to know, female. Should have mentioned that at the beginning. If your female has 7 mysticism or higher, guaranteed you're getting into this. And you have a good chance at events, though you do need a previous magic user. It's good to know. All of that being done, that brings us to the conclusion of the human child growth events. Thank you all so much for watching. If you were watching this video, you probably had no clue what's going on, especially if you watched to this point in the video. So why don't you give the channel some of your support so I can continue making these videos, and click that subscribe button up above. I'll catch you guys next time.